everybody, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 questions over coffee. I am delighted, and I have got my coffee here with me today, so it's here ready to go. I'm delighted today to be joined by Mike Lawrence. Mike is a really interesting transformational coach. He started his career in leisure and hospitality, and I'm sure he might get into that, where he was a Butlins Redcoat, helping holidaymakers through positive engagement and mindfulness. He's now a mentoring and coach for a number of large organizations. He reduces absenteeism, he improves employee morale, and he improves company internal culture. And Mike is in great demand in the corporate world, and he has got some clients who have described him as truly transformational. So I think we're going to have a really fascinating discussion today. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Yeah, good day, Stuart. It's great to be here at last. It's been a while.
It has. It's taken us a while to get this set up, and thanks for taking the time to do this, because I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Mike, can you just start by giving us sort of an insight into the sort of person that you help, the sort of internal and external behaviours, etc., that you might be seeing in your clients that they wish to change and bring about a better well-being attitude?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so, Stuart. Obviously, it's changed because I think prior to sort of COVID and the lockdown, a lot of the clients, the people that were seen on a private basis in my clinic in Sheffield, tended to be women in the 40s, like business owners, because you tend to find that the women, generally speaking, had a well-being regime, and so they were more looking after their actual well-being, their mental health. This has changed somewhat, and now this is sort of balanced out, and seen a lot of men, which is good, who are now starting to come forward and have that conversation, talk about the challenges and problems that they face with their sort of well-being. And so prior to COVID lockdown, it was the general sort of stress, depression, sort of anxiety, also burnout, as I say, was on the increase. Whereas now it seems to be around financial well-being, that lack of uncertainty about the future with the rising cost of living, and so people trying to figure them out how we can navigate through these sort of challenges, because in the media and the governments, we're talking about a lot of the problems which are going on, and yes, occasionally we have a mental health awareness, but really we don't seem to be saying much about how people need to look after themselves in these challenging times.
So what are the behaviours, the things that you've seen people with those thoughts try to do to help themselves before you get involved with your services?
You've got the negative behaviors and the positive behaviors. Negative behaviors, and some people might think the positive is the coping strategies. So hybrid working brought in people eating more from home, and generally speaking, eating to excess as a way of trying to cope, because working from home, hybrid working, you're not too far away from your kitchen, and so it's readily available. People are drinking more as well at home, because again it was readily available. Also working more, one way of filling that gap in terms of the challenges and problems that they're facing, and felt as though that we needed to sort of work more to fill in those gaps. And so you're finding that working with people who are suffering with burnout a lot in lots of situations, they're not looking after themselves, and typically the sort of things which I'm hearing a lot of the time, the things such as, I'm feeling overworked, I'm feeling stressed a lot, I'm feeling depressed, I can't get to see my doctor, or if I do get through to see a doctor, I just feel as though that I'm not listening, because I've just got a short time with the doctor, and in most of the cases they're prescribing medication, which is obviously the right thing to do, but what they're wanting to see is to see somebody that was going to help them with CBT or counselling, and depending on where you live and where you are in the country, it'll depend upon what level of support that you might get.
So, Mike, you've described some really interesting things there. Those are all things which I guess you provide. Do you provide them on site in your own clinic? Do you go to workplaces? How do you offer those services?
Yeah, well, there's twofold. I've got a clinic in Sheffield. Also, people see me remotely as well, which is one of the advantages and benefits, I suppose, is the remote working. And so I'm able to offer a range of support services to people throughout the UK, and also I've got clients, throughout the world as well. And then I also get involved with organisations who provide employee assistance programs, and some people who might be fortunate, if you're working for a large organisation, you might be able to get some support through your EAP. What I find is that a lot of people who have got these schemes in the workplace, which are free, they're not using them. So if anybody is watching this program, you have got, and you're in a company that provides an EAP, it's really important that you do so. That said, I go into companies and tend to be smaller organizations, and where they haven't got an employee assistance program, and I will come in there and I will deliver talks and have one-to-ones with members of staff who may not feel confident speaking to some of their mental health problems to somebody within HR. And in some cases, you've got people being trained as mental health first aiders. I'm a mental health first aid instructor, and so I deliver that training on site and also in the workplace. But time and time again, you find that people who are mental health first aid trainers, again, people within those organisations, there might be some stigma associated to going to the mental health first aider to talk about, there's some of the problems that they actually face. So I offer a range of workshops, and they range from menopause, which has been on the increase, which has been asked for quite a lot, mental health awareness, stress, depression, anxiety, nutrition, and financial well-being, because now that organisations recognise that they have got a duty of care, and as part of that corporate social responsibility, they are doing more and need to be seen to do more for their employers.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Mike, I understand you've got a pretty valuable free resource that people, even if they're not part of a large organisation or a small business, even if they work on their own, that they can take in order to be able to do something. And I've just put the link to that scrolling along the bottom of the screen now. That's your website, and the link is Rediscover Your Confidence, the antidote to good mental health. Do you just want to describe to us what that resource brings to the table?
Yes, I can. It's a resource which is available to everybody. It's a training program which I created and developed online about a year ago, and this was after some research that I did with clients, and also put some, a magic one question on LinkedIn midway through the pandemic, when I asked, if I could offer you something. If I help you with something in particular which would move you forward in terms of mental health and well-being, what would it be? And so based upon the feedback from existing clients, previous clients, and also friends and family, in the poll that I ran on LinkedIn, I created this support program for people around the UK and also around the world who are able to step onto this series of webinars and workshops, which I deliver via video, and also on a one-to-one workshop basis, where we'll be tackling and dealing with some of the challenges which they might have faced a long time ago in terms of their health and well-being. Because a lot of the times, the things in which we face now, the problems that we have, sometimes it might be through the loss of somebody, or it could be something that we saw in our early years, in our childhood, and subconsciously we've repressed those memories and thoughts, and then it impacts us in later life. So I help people who come onto the course to identify, or help them to identify, some of the root causes of their problems and give them sort of coping strategies, help and support, so that they're able to hopefully lead a better quality of life.
Great, Mark. Great use of LinkedIn. Get that feedback on what people actually need from you. What a great use, Mike. I guess there must be a number of books or courses, programs that you've taken part in yourself, which have really inspired you, that you have used as a way to build up your own education. Is there something like that you'd like to share with the audience today, in order to give them a flavour of things that you've been learning, or things that you've discovered that you'd like to sort of bring to the audience?
Yes, there's a couple that come to mind, and it's always books. I'm always reading books, always learning. I love there's a book, it's also a series by a gentleman called David Eagleman. He's also been featured on BBC. You can see he's got some on YouTube. There's some videos that he's got, and also lots of I think some BBC iPlayer as well. And he talks about the brain, and goes very deep into the brain, and gets thinking about what's in there and how it works, the mechanics of it all. And there's lots of aha moments. Staying with the brain, many people may have heard of Derren Brown. Mm-hmm. And there's some great two podcasts that I've listened to recently. One's called Boot Camp of the Mind, which is excellent. And there's one that's Boot Camp of Your Life, which is really good as well. And again, he delved into the brain, talks about some of the blind spots that we have, and how we think, and how certain things that can influence our sort of beliefs as well. And the final one I'll share with you is one called what's it called? Is it Lost Focus? I think it's called Lost. I think it might be Lost Focus, and it's written by a gentleman called Johan Hari, Hari. And this is, for me, it's dynamite, because when you read this book, or I listened to it on Audible when I'm going walking. I guess you're thinking about how we use our time and where that time got. Where does the time go? Because we say it all the time, don't we? If you love what you do, and I love what I enjoy in doing throughout the day, and at the end of the day, it's like, wow, where's that time gone? But we can use that time more effectively. And when you break it down, and the amount of time is actually lost, or as he would say, taken away, then you calculate that time and says, well, what would I have done with that time if I controlled it, a lot better? And typically, everyone's got a mobile phone, and the amount of times, and there's lots of studies and research, and he talks about it as well, the amount of time which is lost on looking at those notifications that keep coming up on the day-to-day basis, and also emails. And yourself, Stuart, you're nodding your head, and emails. And we're doing this podcast sort of like remotely, and I've got notifications switched off. I've got emails, I've got everything switched off. And in actual fact, I've had them switched off for about 4 years. And the amount of time, the amount of control that I have now is it's incredible. And, a lot of times when people ask me, I'm being interviewed, and you might ask me anyway in the future, and it says, what tip would you give people, in terms of the well-being? Turn the notifications off.
I love that, Mike. And yes, you're right. I'm nodding, because I too am I do not have notifications on my phone. I get, and there are reasons for it. And, and we're going into what you said about Johan Hari, and I believe he was the guy that invented this thing called the Johari window, which I've heard a lot about, which is you don't know things about yourself. You've got to look at yourself in a different way in order to see it. But I'm very aware of the fact that notifications are one of those things which activate some very deep old thinking in our brain, what they call the lizard brain, which is, the crack of a stick in the woods used to be a sign for us to sort of get ready to run away. Nowadays, it's a bing on a phone, and it activates all that same system in our body, so that our adrenaline is hyped up, and we sort of get ready to either run away or fight. And what you don't need when you're sitting watching the television and trying to relax from the day and decompress is bings from your phone. Or when you're focused at work, you don't want to bing from your phone or a little thing popping up in the corner of your screen. So I'm like you. I now have a system where I have my emails set as a calendar invite for myself, and I go and view my emails up 3 times a day. And that's the only time I read email, because otherwise I'm focused on work. And when I want to actually sort of go onto social media, I use a technique, you've probably heard of it, called the Pomodoro technique.
Yep,
I work for a focused time, and then I give myself permission for a 5-minute break. And if I want to check Twitter, that's the time I check it. Or if I want to check LinkedIn, that's the time I check it. And I really don't do anything other than that. So I don't have notifications like you. And it has freed up hours of my week. It really has.
It works a treat, because you're probably well aware that in those studies, it highlights that if you've got the emails on, if you're working away, and because they talked about multitasking, and we all say that we are great multitaskers, and it breaks that myth by saying no, the brain doesn't work that way. You can only do one thing at a time, and those people who think they're great multitaskers, they take longer to do those particular tasks. And also, when if you're writing a document or a report, and that email pings up, and it pricks your conscience because it activates that part in your brain. It's like, I need to go to that. So you start to write to that. And then it then takes you about 20 minutes then to go back to that document, to that part of your mind you was accessing to get all those nuggets of information when you're in your flow, to write that piece of work. It takes you 20 minutes to get back to that place again.
Just brilliant. Love it, Mike. Love it. We could talk about those techniques for about another 2.5 hours, but I won't, because you need to get on and do something else, and you need to focus again on your work. So let's just get to the final question. Mike, there is probably a question that you're thinking at the moment. I wish he had asked me whatever that question is. So, Mike, would you please tell us what is the question you would like me to ask you? And then once you've asked the question, effectively answer it for us, so that you don't leave us hanging with an interesting question, but no real fulfillment of the answer.
You probably mentioned it in the intro about being a redcoat.
Do tell us. What did you learn being somebody who helped holidaymakers through what they hope would be a stress-free time? How did you help them?
I think it was two. I helped them enjoy and have a good time and have fun. And when you look all those years ago at a very young age, the ability to be able to work and enjoy what you do and have fun, and also impact positively in people's lives, in their own sort of health and well-being. And that was from the young generation all the way through to the older generation, so all those generations. And it helped me with my confidence, because prior to going there, I was probably an introvert and brought up in an old steel town of Sheffield, and going to college and what have you around that way, and just going and being flung into this space of over 5,000 people who were there and spent a lot of money in those days, and came there with their family, expecting to be entertained and expecting to be taken care of, by these people, these girls and boys in these red coats. And so it's something that to live up to. And the wonderful thing about it is that initially, when I came out of working there, I went into working in London in the leisure and recreation industry. For whatever reason, I don't know why, I wanted to be a manager and be in charge of people. And I found it very difficult in the first few years to adapt, because I'd gone from somewhere where I was enjoying myself, I was having fun, and lots of people were it was all positive engagement. there was no talk of mental health or well-being back then, because everyone was just having a good time. Then we're going into the civil service in local authority in London. It was totally different, and it took me a few years to actually adopt. And also, Stuart, as I tried to move through my career in management, I actually had to take off the fact that I was a red coat on my CV, because I was finding that I was getting overlooked, and people felt as though that I wasn't, say, managerial material, and that I didn't take the role seriously. And so I actually took that part out of it and just said that I worked in the leisure industry on the South Coast, and left it at that. It wasn't until many years later that I set up my own consultancy company, and I was being interviewed on Radio Sheffield by I was being interviewed on Radio Sheffield, and like yourself, he asked me the question, but he asked it in a different way. He actually said to me, "What transferable skills did you learn as a red coat that you use in your business today?" And that was like, and there's lots, because yes, I've got a lot, qualifications, a mental health first aid instructor, and gone on lots of courses since then, managerial courses and things around complementary alternative therapies. But those skills that I learned back then, being able to communicate to people, to talk to people, understand people, have conversations with people, not on text or email, but communicate and listen, because that, and interact with people and understand how they talk and how they feel, and pick up all those things. You don't realize that what you learned there, which then took me all the way through there, and it's one of the key attributes that I possess when I'm working with people now. Because one of the key things, because sorry, I was just going to go on to say and finish in that, in my in some of the studies that I've done recently, I was surprised in one way that when we go to school, they teach us how to talk, how to read and write, but the amount of time in which actually is put aside and how to listen is very little.
Mike, that's a really interesting thing to say. I sorry I interrupted you. I was merely going to say that
That's okay.
It's interesting that you had to take away an element of your first part of your learning in your career. I similarly had to remove my scientific background when I first started out as a manager, because people would often ask, "What's somebody like you wanting to do a job like this?" So you just take it away, don't you? But I think that final point about learning to listen was probably the most interesting one that I think you've hit upon. If we could just learn to listen at a young age, you're right. At school, we are not taught what we need when we get out into the real world, are we? We're not taught about that teamwork. We're not taught about that ability to communicate. We're largely sort of sat in silence, listening to somebody who feeds facts. We're not taught nearly enough how to listen to each other, and it's something we learn far too late in life. And unfortunately, when we've learned it, we have ingrained behaviours which we have to undo in order to be able to learn it properly.
Absolutely, because we've all got our frame. We want to be, with the social media, it's all about look at me, like, and in reality, it in a lot of cases projects a false image of actually who we are. But being able, in terms of a mental health and well-being, because a lot of the times when I meet people or see people, and you might feel the same as well, and the first thing that we say, being English and British, we talk, we say, "How are you?" And we always say, "I'm fine, I'm well, I'm okay." But are we? Because a lot of times we're not, and we hope that people will respond, "I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm well, am I right?" Because if we were to say, "Actually, I'm feeling not very well," That's not what we wanted to hear.
We must stop. We could talk for hours. I will just say that I think there is some hope. My son, who is 21, has a friend who has been through some difficult medical problems just recently. And when he first reached out, this young lad, to my son about a year or so ago, and said, "Look, I've got a medical problem that I just haven't told too many people." He's now got through that. There's been surgery and things which have helped him to get through this. He's not out of the woods, but he's better. He sent a text to my son last night, and the text basically said, "Mate, thanks for being there and just listening when I needed somebody to talk to." And I was just blown away that two 21-year-old people, two 21-year-old young men, were able to actually do that. It gave hope for the fact that there is going to be a better view upon mental health in the future, because he did reach out. My son was prepared to stand by and listen and helped him through, and just, went through it with him, no matter how difficult it all seemed. And they just exchanged a series of sort of little text messages just saying thank you. There's hope yet. Really, there is.
And there is, and we can't give up. And that's a great message, that there's always hope, and we need to continue to believe that there is hope, and continue to strive to get that support from like-minded people who are going to listen and hold us accountable on that journey wherever we are.
Mike, let's end on that. That's a brilliant end point. Listen, if people watching, recording, listening to the recording and the playback, if you want to be available to listen to really interesting conversations and pop in with questions and comments with really interesting people like Mike, go to this list, which is https://tca.fyi/subscribe. That gets you onto our newsletter list. We will send you notifications before the broadcast, so that you can watch and listen and learn together with really interesting people like Mike. Mike, I want to thank you so much for being here this morning and spending a few minutes with us. I know you're a busy person, and I know you've got a lot of things you've got to get on with, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.